You are listening to Level Up Your Gaming Podcast, episode 52, A Year in Review. Today we talk about the podcast and doing 1 year's worth of episodes. We discuss some of our favorite topics and dive into them a little deeper. We want to thank everyone for enjoying the podcast and participating in this full year. We look forward to diving more into subjects, and we have some listener feedback and comments that we'll be sharing in coming episodes. Thank you again for listening. If you'd like to participate in the discussion or leave us feedback, you can contact us at levelupyourgamingpodcast@gmail.com or find us on Facebook at facebook.com/levelupyourgaming. If you like the content and want to hear more of the show, subscribing will ensure you don't miss an episode. New episodes come out almost every Wednesday. Also, please review, tell a friend about the podcast, or share with your gaming group. Now sit back and enjoy the episode. Welcome to the Level Up Your Gaming Podcast. My name is Aaron, and joining me in person, Jared, it's been a year.
Yeah, it's been a year.
It's been a whole year. This is our 52nd episode, which is an odd anniversary to celebrate, I know, in some cases, because we might want to celebrate actual milestones, which is 50, 100.
No, this is a whole year. I wanted to celebrate 52.
So we were celebrating 52. We're talking about the 52nd episode we're doing here.
Like, ladies and gentlemen, like, think about it. If you've been listening to us, even if you caught in later and have gone back and listened, like, this has been a year-long journey for us, 52 weeks, and I'm blown away. Like, it seems like we just started yesterday.
And you're listening to us.
And
yes,
you're with us.
And that's the reason we're still doing it. It's because you're listening to us, and we're hoping you're taking something away from it.
Oh, I think some of our contacts that we've gotten from listeners,
mm-hmm.
It's shown that, like, some people are definitely getting it, and we hope that everyone is. But wow, 52.
But before we jump into all this,
yes.
How you doing, Jared? How you been?
Not bad. Just got back from a big project deploy in DC. It was really hard 2 weeks. I've been going there for over like 2 months. I've been there pretty much 4 days a week and back home for 3. But it's the end of that project. We got it rolled out. Nobody thought we could do it. Even the client was like, "You're not going to make it." And I'm like, "I'll be damned if we're not going to make it."
I'll show you.
I dragged essentially, probably about 30 software developers, 2 technical project managers, kicking and screaming to be like, "We're going to meet this deadline." Hell or high water.
Well, that's why you get paid the big bucks, Jared.
Those big bucks. Not yet. Not yet. I'm pretty much the entire time telling the client, "Please be calm, remain calm. Don't cancel. So yeah, how have you been?
I've been good. I have been playing an insane amount of Cyberpunk 2077.
How is it?
It's pretty good. It got a lot of bugs, and I am one of the fortunate people who has a PS5, which actually makes the game playable on console. If you have a PS4, I do apologize, or a PS4 Pro, because it is not a good experience on the PS4.
Really? What's so wrong with does it freeze or stuff like that?
The frame rate's really bad.
It's choppy on a console.
Yes. It was clearly not designed for the PS4 and Xbox One in mind. Which
really?
Is it's one of the big reasons. Like, they're having a bunch of problems. There's a swath of returns for it and stuff. But I can say that if you have a playable version, if you're playing on the PC, if you're playing on Google Stadia, by all weirdness, it is a fun game, or at least enjoyable game. From what I'm playing so far, I don't think it's super in depth. I think the story is going to be pretty good, and the side content's a little lackluster. I'm
just shocked, because it's CD Projekt Red.
I know they did such a good job with The Witcher, and everyone's expecting great things from this. But overall, I'm still enjoying it as a fun game, and it's letting me play with my relatively new toy, which is the PS5, which is the thing that I really enjoy. So,
actually, so pretty much last Christmas, my family gave me a bunch of gift cards to Steam and said go wild.
Mm-hmm.
And because I got my gaming laptop finally, and with the amount of travel, I've really gotten into, this is so bad. I've really gotten into just kind of labor-like simulators.
Like the farm simulator?
Oh my god. No, not the farm simulator. Although, like, I think that'd be perfect for Anthony. I think he'd love that game to death. Out there with his tractor.
Like the thief simulator?
No, it's called Snow Runner, and essentially it is a trucking simulator through deep mud, snow, stuff like that. So it's for people like me who, you know, wish they had. Because for listeners don't know, I used to own a truck. I pretty much owned multiple trucks. Trucks have always been my thing. I've always wanted to go mudding. Because I was born in the backwoods. For most people who don't know that, I don't know if we ever discussed, like, I was born in the middle of
I said that you were a son of the Commonwealth.
I'm a son of the Commonwealth, of what's known as the Big T in between, which, you know, you got Pittsburgh in one corner, you got Philadelphia in the other corner, and then there's the giant T, which is the rest of Pennsylvania, which is not as metropolitan. It's mostly small town, and but I've always wanted to go mudding, and Snow Runner gives me that opportunity to get my truck stuck in the mud and not have to actually winch a truck out of the mud, which is not as fun. But I've really gotten into that. I got into one that's known as Hard Space Shipbreaker. Have you heard about that one?
No.
So essentially, you're just cutting up ship for scrap, like spaceships for scrap, and I'm loving the hell out of it. Like, excuse me. So I'm just having a lot of joy in these kind of. So during our project deploy, I was up for. It almost came to 72 hours of total having to be awake. I think I got 3 hours of sleep in like 3 days, or six and 72. Yeah, because I mean, you know, the deployment started at midnight, and the thing was the client was.
And by the way, that's about 20 hours less than the amount of podcasts that we have.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to listen to the entire dictionary there,
do it in less than 3 days. And so these games kind of helped keep me awake, because there's nothing like trying to get your truck through the mud. I have a blast with this game. It's fun, and the graphics, and how they simulate the terrain, the mud, the sky, the trees, just amazing.
Well, I'm glad that you're having a good time with all that, and we're
Don't
both
judge
having
me.
a good time.
I see your judging
a
eyes.
little bit, but we're gonna go back and shift into our 50-second episode. We really got off track there with simulators.
We've been off track all day.
Project.
Like, to our listeners, we talked for a whole hour before this.
Yes. We were supposed to. I think we were planning on recording another episode after this one.
I don't know if we're gonna make it.
We're probably not going to. We're probably going to end up just doing game, which again is our standard here, which is we record, then we do game. But here at this 52nd episode, really what I wanted to talk about was kind of look back at what we've talked about over this last year and highlight some of the things that maybe we thought were really, really important, and maybe hit on some of the points that we thought were important about those. And then also talk about some of the episodes that we might, redo, because obviously there's a couple with some really bad audio.
Yeah.
We don't want to harm
the
your
side
ears.
mission, or the how to improve your side quest game or episode,
which is so unfortunate, because that's one of our later ones when we've kind of cleaned up the audio issues, and then we had that one day we had such terrible audio issues, and it's such a good episode.
It is.
And
Susan, the living god.
It just unfortunately it just doesn't sound great, which is you're listening with your ears.
Yeah.
And there's nothing else to assist this medium, and so it's so unfortunate that we couldn't do that. Also, we are going to eventually add an intro song and an outro song to this podcast to make it even more razzle dazzle.
Add that little bit. It's it's just like storytelling. You got to put the little cherries on the cake to really make something special. Not that I don't think what we've been doing for a year is not special, because it has been. It's been amazing. It's been an amazing journey. You know, I'm very proud of what we're doing there and what we're doing here, and I hope to God that, you know, some of our ideas is really helping people out there.
I hope they percolate, and I hope that they are useful for intro GMs, or are even giving you the inspiration to get your other players to maybe try and step up to the plate. Because again, that's what we thought about when we started doing this podcast, was to not just, because again, as we've talked about multiple times, Jared has always been our de facto GM. And for 20 plus years, you were the GM.
Yeah.
Okay. And everybody else kind of did run some games, but nobody ran them in any sort of consistency to start honing the craft of becoming a GM. And that's really what needs to happen. It's just like being a good player requires you to play for multiple years.
Yeah, it does.
Being a good GM requires you to tell lots of games.
And that's one of the things that I hope from this podcast, is that we can accelerate some people past the mistakes that I've made.
Yeah, we're letting you know our mistakes and telling you what works best for us.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's so many other things out there that might work better for other GMs, depending on group size. And we've talked about these things, environmental conditions that will change our advice.
Again, most of it comes down to the second episode in our podcast, which is KYP.
And that, to your point that you said earlier, we want to go over some of the things that, you know, if you're just listening to us for the first time, or if you're listening to us for the 15th time, or if you've been with us for the whole ride, which I would love to find out if we've got anybody who's been with us from the full ride. What's our Facebook?
Listen to the entire discography.
Yeah, it has been from the beginning to the end. You know, Aaron, what's our Facebook?
Facebook.com/levelupyourgaming.
Let us know if you've been with us, if you've listened to all 52. You know, I would love to interact and hear from you. You know, we love engaging with our audience. It's, for me, those have been some of the
Jared loves answering listener questions.
Oh my God, I do. I get so excited.
We've gotten giddy from our listener in Australia. Obviously we got Gary in Indiana. There's Chris who sent us in that email. Yep. I think we've had some other ones that have showed up, but
it's just great. But back to KYP. KYP, I think, is probably the gathering in the KYP episode. If you've got to go back and listen to any two episodes, you know, gun to your head, I got to listen to two. Those two, because really setting off a foundation. I can't say that.
Well, I mean, so yeah, our most impactful ones, and again, we're probably going to rehash some of these ideas in future episodes, is the KYP episode and the Gathering episode. And the reason why we've always harped on those two is
harped.
Harped isn't the right word. Always touted those two.
There we go.
Thank you.
Don't thank me.
KYP is so integral for telling the types of stories you want to tell, because I understand that you as a GM are an artiste. Okay. You are waving.
You will not tell me how to hold my brush.
Okay. But if no one likes Monet, guess what?
Oh my God. Yes. There are so many storytellers that could benefit from that episode, because you do learn, you know, like I'm a big fan of Da Vinci's work. I shouldn't say like I'm not exactly like an art critique or anything like that, but
I don't know how I ever talk with a French accent.
I don't know. But you know, you might love the idea of the epic combat. Like, for example, and it's been something that I've encountered over my career of storytelling, is like I get hooked onto an idea. I see a movie and I'm like, oh my God, I want to tell a story in that kind of setting. Like 300. I think so many people got hooked on 300. You know, this is Sparta. And I mean, like, I remember one storyteller that I was playing under at that time, you know, essentially that's all he wanted to do was recreate the Battle of Thermopylae. And it didn't work very well, because like I was probably one of three players who were like Yeah, no, totally. That's a great idea. Like the rest of the players just were not into it.
Yeah, again, if you're going to do that game, you better have you better give your players, well put together characters, or let them put together well put together characters to tackle the situation. And two, you better be sure that everybody at your table likes big combat and likes a game that is going to be centered around only combat.
And that's the thing, and that's why KYP is just so important. It's just because, remember, the end of the day, the goal of role playing is a fun experience. Everyone walked away having fun, enjoying a good time, bringing friends together.
I've heard people disagree with this sentiment, which is that, oh, well, you could just find players that want to play in the game that you want to tell. And my disagreement with that is pretty high, which is that...
Mine's super high.
Which is, you might not have the luxury. I mean, it is easier in the online day and age to find players to fit at your table. But if you want to tell, the example would be like Curse of Strahd, and your players are not interested in that type of game. And sorry to all my D&D players, I don't know the actual story behind Curse of Strahd. All I know is he's a vampire.
I've just seen the
but I know it's a
package on Roll20.
I know it's a fairly popular module in D&D, and it's a very different setting than most D&D campaigns are set in. So you need to have players who are willing to kind of put up with some things that are very different. And sure, you could go find a group of people to do that, but you tend to play with people and people that you've been playing with for a while. You don't want to
playing is about relationships. It's about making friends over years of sitting there, even over a couple of months. For example, I found out somebody I worked with, because as I've said on numerous podcasts, I let my free flag fly. I literally told my boss, because I had to miss storytelling or playing in a game with our friends from DM Dojo.
Mm-hmm.
I told him, "You freaking owe me." And he was like, "For what?" I'm like, "I had to miss out on a game session that I was really excited to do." Now, fortunately for me, he's like a giant Trekkie, and so he was like, "I got you." And I was like, I didn't tell my other boss, because he would have told me he didn't care. And he's like, "Good choice." He's like, "Don't worry, I'll make sure that you have time for the next one." And I'm like, "Thank you. I'm gonna take a day off for it just so I can do it, because I'm excited. I want to play with that group. And I've missed the 2 opportunities that we've had so far. I haven't been able to do that. But no, I disagree with the go find players that match your storytelling, because, as I said, role playing is about relationships and friends and getting together. And
also it kind of goes in direct opposition to KYP, because you then don't know your players. You know nothing about them other than that they are willing to play in the game that you're putting forth. So you could have a bunch of wild cards that are doing all sorts of crazy stuff, and you're like, "Guys, this isn't," and they're like,
exactly. You could be, you're just going, "Oh, well, I like mass combat," and that's not leveling up your gaming. That's not leveling up your GMing. If you're just going out there to produce what you've already produced, not trying to explore, experiment, improve, if you're just trying to pander to a certain audience, that's not very forward thinking, because I'm sorry. It's you want to be able to, a true artist should be able to, take his brush and experiment with other things. I think it was Monet who had a blue period. Was it?
I don't know.
I don't know shit about art. It's like when we make baseball analogies when neither of us play baseball.
You know that art thing? I think there's like a brush and an easel and
a funny hat. But you really, Monet experimented with his blue period. I'm sure there were many experiments throughout every artist's lives, and that's what artists should people should aspire to, is trying new things.
Yes,
and
you can experiment with your group.
Exactly. Instead of
And
just
instead of going and finding a group that wants to hear the game that you want to tell. So experiment with your group, and then, but gear it towards them, and in make sure that the notes of the game are geared towards your players. Which means that if you want to tell a story about how your players are going to find a magical sword that will slay the Demon King, again, it's a MacGuffin type story. Not in love with the MacGuffin story. If you
Not
want
in
to
love
listen
with it,
to
but I
the
totally
episode
get it.
about the should nots, that's one of the things we tend to advise against.
I tend to advise against MacGuffins.
But again, if your players like MacGuffins, then finding the magical sword makes sense.
If that is what your players are down for, if they're like, dude, we love it when there's the shining sword and we pull it from the stone and are able to defeat the Demon King, then bring that to the table. Now, the trick is, and this is, kind of getting into that point, and it's a point I wanted to make with not just pandering. So, like, for example, let's take my 300 example. I want to tell a story in the days of 300. You can go out and look for another group that is like, all I want to do is mass combat. Or you can challenge yourself as a storyteller, GM, DM, whatever title you have. Mother. I love that term. I can't wait. I will not be Jared for that whole night. It'll be like Jeopardy, and I'll just be like, I'm sorry, you have to ask Mother. You can't ask Jared. You'd be like, Jared, can you please pass the 7-Up? And I'm going to be like, Jared isn't here anymore. There is only Mother. So, find the way, if you're using KYP and why it's such a hallmark for us, with KYP, if you want to do a 300 game, that's great, or based in ancient Greece. The trick of storytelling, the really great storytellers out there, they're going to look at their players. They're going to say, okay, I'm going to combine my wants. I really want to tell a story set in ancient Greece, 300 Spartan-like. The truest storyteller is going to find a way that his players are also going to enjoy that story. Find ways to mold, manipulate, control the story into a way that everyone at that table is having a good time. Whether or not that be that person who loves politics. Remember, we talked about spotlight moments and just being in the light. Everyone has to be in the light at all times, but there will be those spotlight moments. And it's really crafting your story to make sure that everyone's got spotlight moments, everyone's got moments in the light. Spotlight, light, spotlight, light. And you're shifting around the table, and everyone has that opportunity to really enjoy it. It's manipulating the story in such a way that your players will find the same passion and same love that you have. Now, if you know, for example, I do not do well with medieval. I don't.
If you know you have weaknesses,
I have significant weakness there.
you can avoid those weaknesses.
You can avoid those, and you can work with it. Now, I'm never going to say to Aaron and Brian, I'm never going to tell them I'm never going to tell a Dark Ages game. Actually, I've tried many times to try to do a Dark Ages.
You've tried to tell them, but again, this is part of you find a modern Knights game that you like to play better at some point.
Storyteller
and thus
ADHD.
And thus we tend to play in that one because you have more desire to play in that one because you have more interest in that subject. But to your point there, challenge yourself. You can do shorter games that are in the medieval period. You could do a 3-session game that's in the medieval period. Doesn't mean that you can never get back to Modern Knights or you can never jump into a different genre. That's the glory of not telling a massive game or even breaking up a massive game and being like, okay, this is a cliffhanger moment, and we'll get back to that. And right now, I'm just going to tell you a nice little Star Wars campaign, or I'm going to tell you a little short D&D campaign, or we're going to do a module from D&D, or we're going to do play a Palladium game, or we're going to play an Aberrant game. We're going to pick your game.
There's a blast from the past.
Pick your game, and be able to do that and be able to insert that, because you can taste something that maybe somebody else at the table really loves, but you wouldn't be comfortable telling an entire epic out of it.
And it's from that I'm really hoping a lot of storytellers, because like we grew up with the idea of a protracted campaign. Try to be Tolkien.
We just talked about this in one of our last episodes, which was the long. Oh no, actually, yes, we did just talk about this in one of our last episodes, which was the long campaign, and everybody wants to tell the long game.
Everyone wants to be Tolkien.
Yes,
but you don't have to be, and there's such a better way not to be. These detective series games that we've been doing with 3 to 4 sessions. So I'm going to share something. I can't give too many details because Aaron, unfortunately, is sitting across from me and he's going to be experiencing this. So I myself just had a great idea, and it was formulating. This cake was baking, okay? And then if you're a baker, you might understand this. I guess I had a souffle. A souffle was rising, and then it fell through the middle. And I watched my souffle die in the oven. Poor souffle. I watched that to actually be more akin to what I saw. My souffle was rising, then burst into fire. And just, I'm like, oh my God, this game has significant freaking problems. And it was like, I've already got stuff in Roll20. I've already got maps and shit. And then I'm like, oh my God. I was missing such large points. It's like not having a villain. Like, that's how big a points I was missing. I'm like, oh my God. So
I remember I got the text that was, this dog doesn't hunt.
This dog just won't hunt. Some dogs got it, some dogs don't. This dog ain't gonna hunt. Yeah, I'm sorry. I was born in those areas. In making I was like, okay, I need to sit this one aside for a second. I do want to have 2 games prepped and ready. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna come up with a one-nighter, like just a ninjas drop from the ceiling. You guys have to fight ninjas.
Which isn't a bad game concept.
Not a bad game concept. That's a fun night.
If you need to buy yourself some time, okay, the 300 fighting an epic army of fights for one night, that's not a bad game concept. To do a protracted game around it, that's a harder game concept.
Much harder game concept. But, I want to have a night of rowdy fun and ninjas getting thrown through, I don't know what those paper windows are made out of in Japan.
They're not tatami. Tatami are the floor mats. I think they're just paper walls. I don't know.
Well, either way, you know how their windows are like paper, and so light can get through there.
Yeah.
Like just ninjas going flying through these paper walls while your barbarian goes, "I am the greatest," and your bard like literally being able to finally bonk somebody over the head with their electric guitar
or lute.
Thank you. Good fun night. As long as everyone's smiling at the end, just remember you need to keep your political guy somehow in that light. Maybe when the ninjas corner him, he's like, guys, we can talk this out. And they actually stop. Give him a chance to talk it out and roll some diplomacy rolls. So when the barbarian comes running in there like, I will slay it. They're all sitting in a line. Yes, we are discussing Plato's hypothesis of true logic. And what do we really know? We're getting into epistemology here. Oh.
Make it weird.
Do I kill them? No. These guys are taken care of. There's nothing wrong with one night of raunchous fun and everyone gets being weird and having fun.
Yes.
And just having fun for the sake of fun. But lost my main point there.
You were talking about your game.
Oh, yes. So I thank you. God, my memory is so bad. I'm going to get on that ginkgo biloba. Funny, been making fun of my mom about that lately. Shit.
Well, you can see the way that you're going to go.
Yeah, well, mom's like a steel trap, and I've been making fun of her for it. And like now I'm going that way, and I'm like not her age.
It's only going to get worse.
Shit, Aaron. Thanks. Christ almighty. All right. So my game, I was like, I'm gonna make a one-nighter, just something to have fun with the guys. Oh my God! So I started, getting into it, I put down the map, and I'm like, well, what if I want to add this? I did some noun switching. What if I want this? Suddenly, I have detailed NPCs. And it's not a cooks in the kitchen situation. If you need to know what the cooks in the kitchen situation is, go back to the episode with side stories, and Aaron goes into detail about the cooks in the kitchen situation. Essentially, I had a large subplot entirely surrounding useless NPCs that never even got brought into play. But these NPCs will be brought into play, and the details about them can be used throughout the game. And suddenly, I don't see this game as a one-nighter anymore. It's going to be like a 2 or 3 maybe. And I'm like, oh my God, it gets really deep, and it could be the jump-off point to something else. It's going to be a decent cliffhanger at the end, at the very least. So sometimes, that KYP and finding spotlight moments and trying to take all of our stuff that we tell you about can turn a small, like, one-night game into something really kind of cool. And that's what's been happening with me, because I'm like, let's put a little more detail into that.
I think we had always been, I guess we talked about the one-shot game, but we'd always been kind of against it. I mean, not against it, but we'd always been kind of away from it, since that's where we started as players.
Yeah.
And we never did anything other than combat in a one-shot game. And one-shot games can sort of center around combat. They can be very raucous, but you can do some pretty deep things with a one-shot game that can kick off larger games. And the reason why I say that is, I just had that experience recently where I told a one-shot game, and it worked out that it just happened to kick off good, like, connections, and it kicked off an entire, a set of chronicle here in our collaborative storytelling.
Yeah.
But, it galvanized players. It was a good straight gathering.
You're talking about the shootout in
the border town.
Oh God, it was such a good game. That was, like, probably some of the most fun I've had in role playing in years.
It was just designed to be fun, but I think you guys liked some of the notes that I put in that were story elements.
Yes, we loved it. I mean, it created such a firm foundation for this game. It was really just a great gathering.
I think it just solidified some more points about our world that we were kind of
building. It did. Absolutely.
And again, this is, kind of brings me to the other episode that I thought was really, really important. We always talk about it, is the gathering episode, which is...
We always talk about it.
And the reason why the gathering is so important, and I will state it again, it is stated in the gathering episode. And again, that will probably be one of the episodes that we definitely redo and re-talk about, is...
We're going to harp on it.
Yeah, we're going to harp on it. Thanks, you jerk.
You filthy animal.
The reason why we're going to bring it back up again at some point, and why we keep bringing it back up, is in our past, most of us woke up in a white room. And I'm sure if you've ever played in a role-playing game, you have woken up in a white room, you have been sitting in a bar, you have been assembled by X person, okay? And those, and they're not the worst way to gather people, because you need to put people together, but there are better ways that make any game, no matter how short or long they are going to be, come together better. Which means that your players, the key is investing connections between your players. So this can be done by having them create the connections in the session 0, and they know each other going in, which is a good way to do it. Or you need to think of a way that they organically come together. We talked about this I forgot the story where they're all going to the city of the undead to fight the necromancer. And they start arriving one by one, and the serendipitous kind of entry, which is the leap of faith to see why you would work together, is not very. It's a small suspension of disbelief,
just a little one. And that's really all you got to focus on, is making sure that leaps of faith, you're not jumping a shark. And if any of you are wondering what that is, look up Happy Days, Jumping the Shark. And it became a film term, which means you take two great leaps of faith. That the Fonz was so cool that he could jump over a shark on water skis.
Really? I thought it was about the later days of Happy Days and how when you jump the shark, you have effectively hit the point where you've done everything you can do, and it's you've run out of ideas.
I mean, I could see it and be interpreted as far as I was told. I was told by my brother that's what it means.
If you know the answer, the great debate rages on.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
But anyways,
how I take jumping the shark is taking two great leaps of faith. Just things that are just shutting your audience off because it's like, no effing way. It's like the, I can't think of like a good example, but it's just going too far. Like, guys, really, we all arrived at this bar at the same day. We all got drunk on the same night. And ninjas, so...
You're all in the bar fighting together is one thing. But again, the leap of faith... So this is what makes it hard. And again, it kind of goes to the KYP episode, which is the next episode. If you have players who are going to metagame and be like, well, Tom is playing the bard and Joe's playing the half-orc and I'm playing this barbarian over here, and I know who they are, and thus we're all just going to work together when the game starts. That is a way for your players to gather. It just, when you're trying to weave together a story and hit notes, it feels better when the players know that they will work together because they're the players at the table, but when the story makes sense for them to work together.
It is crucial.
When it makes sense, when they're like, oh, well, we're, like Jared said, I show up and, oh, man, the gates are barred. And then the other person shows up and he goes, well, I've got some rope. And the other guy comes up and he's like, I've got some twigs. And like, well, we can fashion together a rope ladder and then throw it over there. And I've got a grappling hook to throw it up there. And like suddenly all these people happen to have the right pieces as they come together. Like, it makes sense because you start working together and you start galvanizing your group.
Yep.
And it's a small leap of faith. But if you just have everyone show up there and they're like, you're here too?
Wow, we all showed up at exactly the same time, even though we were traveling from different locations.
Or the king brings you all together and he goes, I've assembled you all because you're all the greatest at what you do. And
they're like level
but then you know that Joe's playing the Kender character and he's playing the lumberjack, and you're like, you summoned a lumberjack to take care of this?
And we ran into this problem not too long ago. I mean,
in our second stint with the Detective Series game, we basically said make characters, okay? But the stipulation that we had was we didn't explain that the character should have some background in doing investigations and handling the supernatural.
Nope. We just said they could either have a power or not have a power.
Yeah, and so we had just a ragtag group of people.
We had an IT support guy.
We had an IT support guy. We had a financial planner, a con artist who's a pacifist, and and then we had a very angry Irishman.
The Irishman was the only one who was actually any way related to like investigating the occult, because he could speak to ghosts.
He was also haunted by ghosts and.
At least he actually did fit the module. The rest of us made characters that didn't actually fit. Like,
ironically, yes, his was the only one that did fit
the mold.
Bill.
Yeah.
Everyone else was just not prepared for things. Brian's character was like every time he put you into a combat, because like the end of the game would always come down to like, here's the monster, time to fight it. And Brian's like, can we maybe like reason with the monster? And I'm
can
like,
we
damn it,
talk with him? And you're like, no.
Like there is no saving him. Like, damn it.
See, and you know what? That brings up a good point, because it brings up that even with 20 plus years of storytelling experience, 20 plus years of playing experience, you're still going to make mistakes, and it's okay. And, honestly, that's one of the big things that we, as I said earlier, we hope to fast forward you past some of our errors.
Yes.
And and to learn and to it's okay. Like if you're listening to this podcast and you're like, man, I can't get these spotlight moments. Don't give up on them. Keep trying. Really one of the main points of this podcast, and I'm warning you, Aaron, like I'm moving into my poetic endings. I'm warning you. You have anything?
Oh, okay. Well, again, Jared's about to move into his poetic endings, but he's got a good point, which is keep working at the things that you aren't good at now, because the more you practice them, the better you will get at them. If you are not good at coming up with ways to gather people, if you are not good at planning your next step, if you're not good at talking about NPCs, these are all things we've talked about. If you're not good at doing your side stories, the biggest piece of advice I can give you is don't try to boil the ocean and do it all at once. Okay? Just tackle small things to improve your games. And every time that your game goes off well, finishes, then you can take another piece and add it in. If you're building the scaffolding that makes your great GMing Tower of Power.
Tower of Power. Love it.
So anyways, Jared, go ahead and get poetic for
Well, one of the things of this podcast, and I guess, it's one of the things, we said we want you to grow and stuff like that. Really, this podcast for the last 52 episodes has been about improving, getting better, practicing and honing and training your skills. And one of the things that on our 52nd episode, I really want to put forth is what is the goal of honing this skill and getting it all together. And I think one time I did touch on it before. The reason for this improvement, to talk about skills and different things that we can do and to have this dialogue, is the reason for the improvement is to create more fun. More fun. How can I make my game more fun for my players, more fun for me? So in those fun times, we grow our relationships, we get closer to each other, and we build these lasting friendships. And that's what we hope for this podcast, is that through it, not only do you increase your skills, get better at certain things, but your group comes more firmly together in the bonds of friendship that will last for years.
And also maybe you can get yourself a break from GMing by getting one of your other players at the table to tell a couple stories.
Way to ruin my poet.
Sorry.
I'll never make poet laureate with you at my side.
Nope, you will not. Do you have anything else you want to add to this?
Nope, that was it.
Well, anyways, we do thank you for listening to 52 episodes of us going yakety yak yak yak, and we do hope that you've gotten something out of those 52 episodes of us going yakety yak yak yak. And I'm doing this to make Jared laugh right now.
Yakety yak yak yak.
And you can also get Jared's poetry at the end. Philosophizing with GM Jared.
Philosophizing with GM Jared.
But tell us about stuff that you want to hear about. We've got a bunch of episodes that we're still, jazzed to talk about. But we're always looking for suggestions for episode topics, or tell us about your GMing experiences. Maybe something you do want to talk about, or maybe you're like, hey, I listened to your episode on planning games, and I really like that episode, and I want to tell you how I tackle something with it too.
Yeah, or if you need more clarifications on topics, like, hey, I want to hear more about this. Like, we can always bring episodes like that.
Yeah, and so you can get a hold of us at levelupyourgamingpodcast@gmail.com, or you can contact us at facebook.com/levelupyourgaming. We do have a page there. Go ahead and like us, subscribe to the page, subscribe to the podcast. Tell your friends to like the page. Tell your friends to subscribe to the podcast. And you can find us on all major podcast providers. We are literally on every single one of them. Yeah. And we are on YouTube as well. I'm still working on getting the entire episode catalog up there. So, Jared,
smash that like button.
Thank you. If you like that is a medium more than the regular podcast thing. But you can listen to this in the car. You can't listen to the other one in the car.
I totally disagree. Totally listen to YouTube in the car.
But anyways, that's going to do it for us. We'll see you in our second year of doing this podcast. We'll bring you some rehashes on these episodes, and we hope you've enjoyed listening so far. So for Jared, I'm Aaron. Have a great week, guys.
Have a great week, everyone.